What is going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today I wanted to showcase one of my favorite Open Master League Pokemon that is not a legendary, Florges. This Pokemon, despite not having coverage, being a mono fairy type moveset, has a lot of play in the Open Master League meta. So many dragons, so many just neutral matchups, and so many dark types that you're going to see that it's able to have a lot of play into. If you want to see my battles live, I stream almost every day at twitch.tv/ItsAXN, where you can see live insights into my gameplay and see my teams early. I'd love to see you there. The link to that is in the description. But without further ado, let's get into the battles and see what our Florges can do. Alright, game number one, we're going to see our Florges with the Mono Fairy moveset up against the Necrozma, probably the worst case scenario. We have no coverage against this, so we're going to swap out instantly to our Palkia and see what we can do here. Our opponent's opting to stay in for a second, so it seems like Palkia might be a bit of a core breaker for our backline of this opponent. So I want to shield this up, keep this energy just in case we need it later on. Our opponent is still staying in after a Dark Pulse bait. Throwing Dark Pulse normally means that they're probably running Dark Pulse and Sunsteel Strike, so Outrage is likely not on the table, but I still want to throw this Aqua Tail before they get to 2, and in comes an Yveltal. So the switch clocks are very desynced, and we know that we've stripped down that Necrozma quite a bit at this point. There's a chance here we could have some play with our Palkia getting some damage against this, and maybe even swapping back to Florges in just a second. We reach another Aqua Tail before our opponent is going to be able to throw a charge move, which means that our switch clock is going to be back up. They opt to shield this, which means we can come in with our Fairy type Pokemon, lock it into the Dark type, and potentially be in a good spot. Unfortunately, because Florges' stats are not that offensive, we probably can't go for a full Fairy Wind down. We do tank that first Oblivion Wing, but the next one will end up knocking us out if I let it through. I don't want to let that happen. I want to get our Florges to take care of this Yveltal right now, so our Rhyperior doesn't have to try to mud slap it down, and in comes that Necrozma once again. They see in PS here. I'm hoping this is a Sunsteel Strike, so they waste a ton of energy. If this is a Dark Pulse, that's a pretty good play by them, actually, because after CMPing here, I know I don't knock them out with this Disarming Voice. They could probably Shadow Claw us down, but the Switch Clock, once again, is going to be coming up. Potentially, I can mud slap down this Necrozma, and we see that our opponent also wants that energy lead. They come in instantly with the Palkia, but the thing is, this is exactly what I want to see. Our Shadow Rhyperior has such a good one-shield matchup here. Normal Rhyperior does not end up knocking out with one charge move plus some Mud Slaps, but the Shadow Rhyperior just has that extra bit of damage that's going to make it so these Mud Slaps will put them into Breaking Swipe range so much quicker. Aqua Tail is going to be reached from our opponent, but Rhyperior is so spammy. We reach the second move here, the second Breaking Swipe, before they're able to reach their second Aqua Tail. Mud Slap is going to be able to finish off the Dragon and Water-type Pokemon. We can Mud Slap down the Necrozma, taking the game against one of the worst lead matchups we could have seen. Next matchup here, Enamorus in the lead, fellow Fairy type, fellow Fairy Wind user, so this is going to be interesting to see how this one's going to play out. Obviously, Enamorus is very attack-weighted. Florges is actually fairly bulky, so I think the way this matchup goes is they're going to be forced to shield moves first, especially if I at least bait the potential Moonblast here, which we are going to do. Disarming Voice, though, is going to be queued up. Is my opponent going to call this, or are they going to let it through? Enamorus ends up shielding, and at this point, I know we're in a pretty good spot as long as we can take care of this, so our backline doesn't have to see it. They swap into a Palkia against our mono Fairy type Pokemon. Okay, we'll take it. We have Fairy type damage here for this as well. Moonblast ends up doing almost the entirety of Palkia's health bar at this point. We can shield this farm all the way down, have energy once again for the backline. This is still a little bit scary, even though we did just take care of an entire dragon with a very low HP Florges, because that Enamorus could be a little bit of a problem in the backline. But I can save this energy, potentially use our Florges later on this game. They come in with a Solgaleo, very spicy team from this opponent. They have a Solgaleo XL and an Enamorus XL. I don't even know how this trainer has this many resources. Luckily, we are going to have good matchups in the backline to this Pokemon. We have an energy lead with our Rhyperior, so they're forced to throw a move as soon as they can. I'm just going to no-shield this at this point. I know I have 2 charge moves on our Florges. We can throw the Disarming Voices back to back, either knock them out or get a shield and a lot of damage against them. And the thing is, Palkia, despite doing resisted Dragon Breath pressure, is going to do quite a bit of damage just because of how squishy Enamorus actually ends up being. This next Disarming Voice is going to come through. Opponent did opt to shield that first one up, and once we can take care of this Enamorus, I know our Palkia is going to have a lot of play against that Solgaleo later on this game. Opponent is going to throw a charge move. I'm going to shield this up. I feel like it's going to do more damage than anything that Solgaleo potentially could throw, unless they're running like Solar Beam, I guess, but that's not the most common moveset. To be fair, I guess Solgaleo is also not the most common Pokemon, so I wouldn't put it past them, but it looks like they are just throwing a Psychic Fangs right now. It's going to do a decent amount of damage, but we are incredibly resisting these fast moves. It's using Fire Spin. We are a Water and Dragon type Pokemon, so we could care less right now. We reach the Aqua Tail. This is going to put them either into Dragon Breath downrange or into range where the next Aqua Tail, which we have ready, is just going to be able to knock them out. I don't want to take another move because we are defense dropped, and I know that they don't have any energy on their Enamorus. We can just Dragon Breath down and take the win there. GG's to our opponent. Next game, we're going to see Yveltal, this time in the lead. Fantastic lead matchup. We want to keep this away, potentially either from our Rhyperior or get a shield advantage later on. Our opponent opts to come in with a safe swap of a Zacian, a Pokemon we don't have a hard answer to, but we can go for a potential Moonblast, get a lot of damage with our Fairy Winds and Disarming Voices as well, and neutralize this later on. The thing is, while we would prefer our Florges to be against that Yveltal, we still have two answers in the backline that are at least not terrible against it, so I'm fine neutralizing a pretty bad matchup here and trying to catch a wild charge. Our opponent does not opt to throw it, and I'm going to respect the fact that they could go for a close combat right now, shield up the move, and farm them all the way down. They do end up having Play Rough, though, as their charge move coverage, which is a very annoying shield. I could have no-shielded that easily, but at least at this point, we're not in Sucker Punch downrange for the Yveltal. I know at this point they're likely going to have to shield. A Rock Wrecker would get a one-shot against this Yveltal if they end up letting it go, and my opponent makes a very, very bold but very good call. They end up letting that Breaking Swipe go. That's not looking good for us right now, but I can use my Rhyperior just a little bit more. It seems like they must be kind of weak to us in the backline since they came back in Yveltal rather than like a Kyogre or a Landorus or something like that against us. I'm going to shield it up, make our opponent's life as hard as possible, make it so this Yveltal is going to have to shield these moves. They end up throwing a Dark Pulse on a potential CMP with our Breaking Swipe, but we catch it with our Florges. This is going to be a resisted -1 Dark Pulse. It's almost nothing to us, and they come in with that final Pokemon. Man, if I would have just gone straight for the Rock Wrecker, they had a Necrozma in the backline, we could have had so much play here, but unfortunately they get a big farm down, and now I can absorb the energy on our Palkia. I want to make sure that if they do have potentially Sunsteel Strike, that we're not going to take it on our Rhyperior, and if it's running Outrage, it's going to be good intel to know as well. They go for an Outrage, it nearly one-shots our Palkia. We reach the Aqua Tail before they can Shadow Claw us down, but this is going to be a very tricky endgame. I think it's going to come down to, once again, a bit of a 50-50 call in the backline here. Opponent does opt to no-shield that. Probably a smart play, knowing that I just mud-sap them down one way or another. They come back in with their Yveltal. I'm going to go and full send it this time. If they make a third 50-50 call against me, that is absolutely crazy. They opt to shield this time, and they're going to sucker punch me down, just barely taking the win there. Honestly, they made 3 great calls that game. GG's to them. All right, next matchup, Florges up against a Tapu Bulu. You might not expect this to be very one-sided, but I think Florges is such a good answer to Tapu Bulu, especially on even energy here, just because I outpaced these Disarming Voices, and I'm not weak to Grass, I'm not weak to Fairy, and my charge moves and my fast moves are just so efficient right now that Tapu Bulu is not going to be able to just brute force its way through us, and I know that our backline is so happy that we're not going to have to deal with this. Our opponent threw on bad timing, which means I can actually go for a Moonblast and a Disarming Voice before they're going to be able to get to a second charge move, which means that no matter what, either we get a lot of damage and a shield, or we just knock out Tapu Bulu so our backline does not have to see this. This Disarming Voice does end up coming through, it knocks out the Bulu, they come in Primarina, and we see that its moveset is on Waterfall. We can take care of Charm Primarina a lot easier with our Rhyperior. Waterfall is a lot better for our Palkia, so it's a good thing that we didn't swap out instantly or anything. We're going to be able to align what we want to here. We actually get a shield as well. Florges is putting in so much work right now this game, and Palkia is going to come in and absorb the energy. I have to shield it up. It could potentially be a Moonblast. At least these Waterfalls are doing almost nothing to me, but this Moonblast would almost one-shot us. Is kind of surprising. I've seen a lot of Disarming Voice plus Waterfall, but Moonblast, I guess, does give you that surprise factor in case your opponent doesn't want to respect those Fairy-type charges quite as much. I have another Aqua Tail loaded right now. This won't knock them out. It won't even put them into potentially range where the next one will. So I want to overfarm just in case that wouldn't knock them out. So we have energy on Palkia and potentially have a way to win this game depending on the backline matchup. They come in with another Water-type Pokemon, a Palkia of their own. If they throw an Aqua Tail first, we are in a bad spot. They didn't throw an Aqua Tail, actually, though. That's interesting. Maybe they thought they needed to overfarm here, because if they overfarmed against our Rhyperior, they get Spatial Rent our Palkia. But the fact that I get the shield here probably just wins me the game, knowing that I have a Spatial Rent, and they let me get to another Breaking Swipe. Okay, I guess my opponent at this point just letting me have this one. I'll take it. This would be a tricky endgame if they would have thrown that Aqua Tail first, but now, at this point, our Palkia would have been able to close out against that Primarina. GG's to them. Next game, a Ho-Oh in the lead. Very, very bad lead matchup, but we have 2 decent answers to this Flying-type Pokemon in the backline. We have access to our Rhyperior, which resists Fire-type damage, and we can go for a Charge move first, because for some reason they haven't swapped out just yet. Breaking Swipe going to come through. It will either draw a shield, or be a very risky no-shield from our opponent. They do end up shielding up that Breaking Swipe. I'm going to shield. If they're staying in this matchup, it feels like Rhyperior has a lot of play. They go for a Sacred Fire. They get the attack drop. That's honestly a little bit unfortunate right now, and they throw another Charge move here before I'm able to get to my next Rock Wrecker. At this point, I will shield this up. Brave Bird does do a decent amount of damage despite the fact that it's resisted, and since they stayed in that long, it feels like they're kind of weak to Rhyperior. I wanted to keep it around. We do reach the Breaking Swipe against this Dialga, get the attack drop, and now I want to build up a little bit of extra energy, then come in Florges to tank all of the damage. We know that they got debuffed. Iron Head is going to be super effective, but it's not going to one-shot us. Even if they weren't debuffed, we'd survive. But the thing is, we don't want to give them a huge farm down with that Ho-Oh later on this game. So what I want to do, rather than winning this matchup straight up, is I'm going to undercharge this Disarming Voice, and and make it so they farm us down, either potentially by throwing a move with this Iron Head, or maybe I'll just get a Fairy Wind down. If they didn't throw this charge move, I could have gone a fast move down against them, and if they do throw it, then I get a fast move farm down either with Palkia or with our Shadow Rhyperior. I think Palkia's energy is going to be a little bit more useful right now, especially after Dialga's out of the way. They end up letting it go, come in with a Zacian, and now I know this is going to be a very tricky endgame. They have a shield, they have Zacian. If there wasn't a shield left over in play, I know we'd win this game, but the fact they have the shield is making it a very uncomfortable matchup right now, because I don't think I can reach another Aqua Tail. With that said, we have so much energy left over on our Rhyperior. Maybe if we make the bait calls properly here, I can still win this game. We have almost 2 moves loaded here. We are going to go for a Breaking Swipe bait. One of the riskiest things you can do against a Fairy-type Pokemon. What is my opponent going to do? They shielded up. We reach the Rock Wrecker here. Make sure no catch ends up happening. And now it's going to come down to, can I reach a Rock Wrecker before we get farmed down by Incinerates? I know I win CMP, but these Incinerates might just be enough to take us out here right when we get the move. We get fast move farmed down by a Ho-Oh. That's honestly so disappointing, but honestly, a very close game. GG's to them. Next matchup, another Necrozma in the lead. Gonna do the same play I did last time. Come in Palkia and try to make this matchup at least not be the worst case scenario for us. If we can whittle down this Necrozma, that's a good thing. If we can make it so they want to use their Necrozma here as well, that's even better. They go for an Outrage this time. Good thing we ended up shielding that move, and our opponent is still opting to stay in this matchup. I'm building up extra energy as much as I can, at least, to make sure that if they want to swap out, we have the ability to either Spatial Rend or Aqua Tail, whatever they bring in, but they are staying in for so long, we actually get 2 Aqua Tails. It must be the case that they are very weak to Palkia in the backline, and we're going to try to whittle down this Necrozma as much as we can to give our Florges more play. Our opponent opts to come in with a Dragonite here. That is a crazy Pokemon to bring in. I'm going to throw this Aqua Tail, but I don't want to do much damage with it. I just want to throw this to make it so I can swap out of this matchup, come in Florges, and farm them down. Honestly, I probably should have done some bubbles there. This is going to be a bit of a tricky farm down, but I know we resist their charge moves here. Dragon Claw, Sweet Power, they're not going to do too much damage to us. Our Florges can easily wall Hurricane. Nope, I guess we don't wall that. We're almost going to get knocked out here. We do get the Fairy Wind down, but holy crap, that was a bit of a surprise here. Shadow Dragonite putting in a lot of work against our Mono Fairy-type Pokemon. With that said, we have a lot of energy on Florges. If they come back in Necrozma, they're going to be forced to throw a charge move here, and that's fine by me. It could be Double Dragon, could be a lot of things. I'm going to come in now with our Shadow Rhyperior, try to farm them down, and there it is, the classic core of Necrozma and Palkia. This is what Shadow Rhyperior is meant for. It is able to Mud Slap down all of the Necrozmas, is able to Breaking Swipe the Palkias, and this is going to be an endgame sweep, I think, with our Shadow Rhyperior. Opponent does opt to throw an Aqua Tail here, but the thing is, we are up on energy. We're going to easily be able to outpace even if we weren't, because we've reached these moves so quickly to this next Breaking Swipe. This will knock them out or put them into 1 Mud Slap range. They do survive, but the next Mud Slap is enough to knock out. Our opponent comes in with their Necrozma, but now we can fast move farm them down. They realize not much they can do there. GG's to them. Next matchup, a Rhyperior in the lead. We don't have a hard Rhyperior answer, right? That's one thing you might notice with this team. With that said, we don't really have a weakness either, but it's going to be a little bit awkward to deal with depending on how our opponent wants to play it out. We're going to go straight for the Moonblast, try to either get a lot of damage or draw a shield against this. Seeing how our opponent wants to play this out is going to be critical. They end up shielding. I'm going to try to catch a move here, but they don't end up falling for it, but they still throw a charge move. If this is a Surf and they one-shot me, you know, well played. If it's not, then we can take it pretty easily. Breaking Swipe is what my opponent opts to throw. It gets the attack drop, which is unfortunate, but we are able to survive another move here and go for a Rock Wrecker of our own. They opt to go for a Rock Wrecker. We survive it. We have a Rock Wrecker, but we are debuffed, so we know that if they end up not knocking us out, we probably don't knock them out. And they opt to double shield, actually. Okay, well, this is going to be an interesting game right now. I do have 2 shield advantage for our Palkia, but there's a chance our opponent is just super strong against Palkia in the backline. Since they are staying in here, and since they're, I think that was just a Breaking Swipe, actually. I can no-shield this even, overfarm with our Florges here, and potentially use our Florges against the backline even still. I have no idea what our opponent is doing, what they have in the backline. 2-shield Palkia, like, there's not a lot that they can honestly beat that. If there's a Charm Premium in the backline, that's probably the main thing that can beat us. They come in with 1 Fairy type, though, and when you see 1 Fairy type in the backline and they've been playing out the game like they have, I wouldn't be surprised to see a second here. Yeah, oh man, that's like the one thing it could have been. Double Fairy taking out our Double Shield Palkia, but you know, GG's to them. I guess they got me there. Alright, Enamorus in the lead once again. We saw this lead matchup is not all that bad. Fairy Wind ends up adding up quite quickly against them, and even if I only land a Disarming Voice, it's going to put them into range where I can either Dragon Breath down or Mud Slap down with our Shadow Rhyperior. They throw a charge move, I'm going to no-shield it, and I'm going to either go for the Moonblast bait or go for the Moonblast this time. It looks like I'm full sending it here. Let's see if our opponent wants to shield up this charge move. They do this time. Probably should have still gone straight for the baits, but this is still going to be completely fine. We can shield up our Florges and go for another Disarming Voice here before they can get to a 3rd fly. Opponent does opt to let us throw this charge move without catching. This Disarming Voice is not going to knock out. Honestly, I'm fine if they end up letting it go. I'll just let my Florges go and farm them down, but they end up double shielding Florges actually, which is very interesting. At this point, I think I could let this go, use shield advantage on our backline, and potentially sweep with either Palkia or with Shadow Rhyperior. It's going to be kind of hard to take this out. Not if they end up swapping out instantly, though, into a Ho-Oh. I kind of love to see that. I'm going to catch a Brave Bird on our Shadow Rhyperior, and now I'm going to make a very, very tough call. Do I want to do it? I think I do. I'm going to go for a full Mud Slap down and see if I can use this energy in the back line. I know we resist their charge moves, and if they throw another charge attack here, it's going to be a Brave Bird. Maybe it's going to be a Sacred Fire, but if this is a Brave Bird especially, I'm just going to farm them all the way down. Flying-type Pokemon against Mud Slap. Who was even worried? We get a full 100 energy coming out of that matchup. If I see that Enamorus come in, I'm going to go straight for the Rock Wrecker, which is exactly what ends up happening. And now we're either going to Rock Wrecker or Breaking Swipe the final Pokemon. We have a ton of energy left over on Palkia. We have potentially a one-shot ability with our Rhyperior. Well, not against that. That's probably one of the few things in the game that I don't think you get really one-shot by anything. But Breaking Swipe will put them much easier into range, where Spatial Rend can knock them out here. This is going to be a super effective attack against a Zygarde, one of the best moves in the game. How much damage does it do? Honestly, not all that much, like 55%. That's kind of crazy how well it tanks that. But we just get a full Dragon Breath down against that thing, still taking the win there. GG's to our opponent. Next game, Florges up against a Zacian. Very good matchup. Good to see this away from our Palkia, and despite the fact that we don't have a hard answer to this, our Florges does do pretty good into it anyway. We outpace them to charge moves, and we can potentially not debuff ourselves, whereas if they're running double nukes, they will have to debuff themselves. I wanted to CMP them, but they end up overfarming actually, going past 12 quick attacks, which is fine. I'm going to go for the Moonblast now. Catch a Wild Charge on our Shadow Rhyperior and see what our opponent wants to do. They do have 100 energy, though, so this could be a little tricky depending on what they throw, or if they just swap out instantly to their Zygarde, this could be interesting as well. Zygarde, a very bulky Pokemon, but Shadow Rhyperior is very offensive. We have Breaking Swipe that could debuff their attack stat. We have Mud Slap that's going to do a lot of damage. We do get that first debuff as well, which means that even if this is a Bulldoze, it's not going to do that much damage to us. Rhyperior is still pretty bulky. Bulldoze is a fairly bad move. Yeah, it's not going to do anything to us, honestly. We reach another Breaking Swipe, and I think we might reach another one if they don't throw another charge attack against us. Breaking Swipe ends up coming through. Yeah, this is not looking all that bad for us right now, actually. Forced to throw another charge attack. This is not looking great for our opponent, because if I come back in with our Florges, I go for a full Fairy Wind down. I'm going to have 100 energy against the backline, and potentially a Palkia that gets to avoid a Zacian, depending on what the final Pokemon is going to be. They throw a charge move. It's going to be a debuffed Bulldoze. I'm not all that concerned about it right now. They do throw it. Dude, that doesn't even do anything to us. That's crazy. We have a very bulky Pokemon against a debuffed other bulky Pokemon, so yeah, it may make sense. But okay, that's probably the worst case scenario. A Ho-Oh in the backline. They end up staying in for just a second, though, which is nice. It gives us some energy to use against that Zacian later on this game. I'm going to shield it up. This is obviously going to be a Brave Bird. It would do way too much damage, and they come in with their Zacian. What moveset do we think they're running? It could be Close Combat. It could be Play Rough, but they are at a ton of energy, so it doesn't really matter right now what moveset they're on, because no matter what, it's going to be very threatening to Palkia. They throw a charge move. If it's going to be a Wild Charge, then we don't know their second move. If they have Play Rough, we're going to get one shot potentially, and they are going to have to make a decision. Do they shield this, or are they going to let their Zacian go? They let it go. They must have been running Close Combat there. They're banking on the fact that a Brave Bird will be able to knock out my Palkia. But the thing is, even though they can probably get through Palkia, if they end up landing that Brave Bird, I have so much energy on Florges, I think I can still just win this game by making them debuff themselves with a Brave Bird coming in Florges and Moonblasting them. I think that should be enough at this range, despite being resisted, despite the fact that Florges is not super offensive. We have so much energy. Moonblast ends up coming through. This should be more than enough to finish off this Ho-Oh right now. Moonblast ends up coming through, knocking out the Fire-type Pokemon. One of the worst matchups for our Florges to see, able to overcome it. GG's to our opponent. Next game, a Dialga in the lead. You might expect this to be a very strong lead for Florges because we are resisting Dragon Breath, but we aren't doing super effective damage. This is one of the few dragons in the entire game that Florges will not do super effective damage to, but we still outpace them to these Moonblasts. It does a sizable chunk if they let it through. Our opponent does opt to shield that first one, which is interesting, but I think at this point this is going to be very fine because we get to another Moonblast here. They opt to CMP as well, which is fine. I get another Moonblast off. If they want to shield this again, then I'm going to have 2 shields to 0. If they no shield, they're going to be in fast move farm down range for either a Palkia or a Shadow Rhyperior at this point. Moonblast comes through. We're going to swap out to Rhyperior and see what they want to do. They come in with a Primarina. That is not what you want to see. It's a Waterfall Primarina at that, but we have the ability to be a very annoying player. Go for a Breaking Swipe. Can we get a debuff or a shield? We get the shield. No debuff. Honestly, I'll take the shield there. Not quite able to reach another one, though, because of no debuff. But since they are going to be running the Waterfall variant, I see this as an opportunity. I can overfarm as much as I need to here, have energy for that Dialga later on, have energy for the final Pokemon, no matter what it is. Most things don't really want to take 100 100 energy from a Palkia, so having this much energy is likely going to be very helpful for us right now. I'm going to shield a second time here, make it so these waterfalls are doing nothing. They're going to be forced to another charge move if they want to knock us out. Overfarm to basically 100 energy here. Our opponent is going to be staying in this matchup. They don't want to swap out just yet. Makes me wonder what their final Pokemon is going to be. We reach the Aqua Tail. It knocks out Primarina. What do they come in with now? Not what you want to see. It is going to be a Zacian, one of the worst case scenarios for our Palkia, but potentially winnable if I can catch a play rough on our Florges, or if I can reach 3 Aqua Tails before they reach their play rough. They do end up overfarming here, but they are at their play rough right now. I'm going to have to catch instantly. I think our opponent has to throw instantly, because if they don't, then we reach the Aqua Tail. Our opponent, they are patient. They are so patient. They go for the quick attacks. I was one Dragon Breath away from an Aqua Tail there. If I would have just stayed in, I could have reached that, knocked out their Zacian, but GG's to them. They made that call, right? All right, next game against a Palkia in the lead and a Rhyperior on the safe swap. We don't have a hard answer to this Pokemon, so I'm going to go for the Disarming Voice, chip them down, and then come in with our own Shadow Rhyperior. What is our opponent going to do? They end up actually shielding the Disarming Voice. Very good for me, honestly, at this point. I don't really care if they end up flipping switch. I have my Palkia that's good into their Palkia. I think that potentially my Florges isn't going to be hardwalled in the backline. I've seen these double ground teams quite a bit, where it's going to be like a Rhyperior safe swap and then a Landorus in the backline. If it's a Necrozma, that could be pretty bad. But if it's the team that I'm saying there with the double grounds, then I should be in a decent spot. They got 2 Breaking Swipe debuffs against us. That means this Rock Wrecker is going to do almost nothing to them, unfortunately. If I didn't get one of those debuffs, maybe that could have knocked out. But those 2 debuffs adding up against us so much there. With that said, I think I can come in Florges, shield once, Fairy Wind all the way down, have a ton of energy. If it is a Landorus in the backline, even Landorus doesn't want to take this energy, right? It's not going to be super effective, but it is going to be a lot of efficient, hard-hitting moves that can be thrown into this ground-type Pokemon. They do come in with the Landorus here, and I'm going to go for a Disarming Voice bait and then try to land a Moonblast. They end up no-shielding the first attack. Very good call by them, but I am going to be able to outpace here to the next Moonblast before their Sandsear Storm, and I think at this point, our Florges has put in enough work that we should be able to win this game. All we need is a little bit of an energy lead on our Palkia. We can farm down this Landorus, Spatial Rend their Palkia, and we should be able to win this game. I also think I survive a Sandsear Storm here. If they don't Stone Edge us, we might even be able to get to a Disarming Voice, which is going to put them even closer to Dragon Breath downrange for our Palkia. We should be in a very good spot right now. We land the move. It is debuffed, so it doesn't do too much damage. They throw its Sandsear Storm almost certainly against us right now. I'm going to shield it up, knowing that the Palkia is not going to be able to outpace me to a Spatial Rend here. I can reach it before they do, but I am debuffed. I think even with that debuff, though, we are going to be able to one-shot them. This is a super effective Spatial Rend against a Palkia. Palkia is not the bulkiest Pokemon out there. It comes through, it gets the knockout, and now we can Dragon Breath down the Landorus and take the win there. GG's to our opponent. Next game, we're going to say a Florges up against a Ho-Oh in the lead. Once again, one of the worst lead matchups we could see, but I'm going to swap out to Shadow Rhyperior, try our best to either flip this matchup or just make it so Ho-Oh is not going to be aligned against our Florges. They opt to stay in. Once again, these Ho-Ohs must not have great answers to our Shadow Rhyperior. I'm going to do the risky bait of the Breaking Swipe. Once again, our opponent opts to shield that up, and since they've stayed in, since they've shielded, I'm going to shield myself, see what they want to throw. If it's going to be a Brave Bird, a Sacred Fire, an Earthquake? Okay, that's a crazy moveset as well. Love to see the shield there, though. That's a lot of energy down the drain for our opponent. They come in with a Xerneas as well. Not exactly a great answer to our Rhyperior, especially when you have this much energy. And I think I see a very interesting play I can make, because they have stayed in so long with that Ho-Oh that the Switch Clock is basically back up. They're at another close combat right now. I am going to swap, catch the close combat on our Florges, and right now this is going to be so awkward for this Xerneas, because they're going to have to throw another move to knock us out, or maybe I can even go for a Disarming Voice to take them out. With that said, I don't really want to knock out this Xerneas, because if I do that, Ho-Oh gets a huge farm down against us. I'm going to try to keep energy up on our Florges here, and potentially win this game with energy lead. Wait, they go for another close combat? I guess they wanted to store a charge move, swap out to Ho-Oh. This is a very interesting game right now. This Moonblast isn't going to do too much damage, but I am stalling the Switch Clock right now, and if I can, I want to overfarm here, potentially snipe them down with a Rock Wrecker at some point this game. I end up throwing another Disarming Voice just to stall out my Switch Clock, and now I can swap to my Rhyperior in just a second, store the Moonblast, and one-shot the remaining health on this Ho-Oh here. Unfortunately, I can't go for a Breaking Swipe. It would be very close to that knocked out. I have to waste a full-on Rock Wrecker to take them out. We see the final Pokemon. This is going to be awkward. They come in with a Dialga. They catch the Breaking Swipe on the Xerneas. Good play by them, but this is still going to be kind of winnable depending on how this game plays out. They end up surviving that move, which is fine. Doesn't really get much off there. They go back in Dialga, and now I'm going to get one shot on Palkia, but I stored that Moonblast earlier this game. Potentially I can still win this one as long as we can reach that Moonblast, as long as we don't get Dragon Breath down before we can tap that charge move. Roar of Time is going to one-shot us right now. In comes our Florges. We almost get Dragon Breath down thanks to a bit of one-turn lag, but we still survive 2 Dragon Breaths. We get the Moonblast, and we knock out the Dialga. Florges able to take the game there. GG's to our opponent. Gorgeous, it doesn't have any coverage. It is no problem, though, against so many good matchups there. It has all these matchups against the neutral Pokemon, the Tapu Bulus, the Primarinas, even, like, the Pokemon that you wouldn't expect it to have great matchups into, such as, like, the Zacian Xerneas. It is very strong just with its very powerful attacks. Well, thank you so much for watching today's video. I stream my battles live basically every day at twitch.tv/ItsAXN, so if you want to see my battles live, please make sure to check me out there. Also, I'm going to upload a lot more to the channel, so if you want to see more content like this, please make sure to subscribe. Thank you again for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.